and welcome to the Courtenay podcast. My guest today is Aman Jabbi, and he is a Silicon Valley insider who is a wealth of information on all of the technologies involved in the cameras and a lot of the surveillance, track and trace type of technologies that are being used to execute the fourth industrial revolution. So we are going to talk about what those technologies are and what the implications for the future of humanity are if all of these technologies get utilized and orchestrated in the fashion that it seems they would like to do. So, how are you doing today, Aman?
Hi, Courtney. I'm doing pretty well. Thank you.
Yeah, so glad that we can connect. I am so looking forward to this.
So am I. It's
Thank
been
you
a
for being
while
here.
since we were chatting about coming on.
Yes, absolutely. So let's start with your background. So you worked in Silicon Valley. You were involved in actually making some of the technologies that are used in some of these cameras and smart surveillance technologies. Is that correct?
Oh, well, not entirely. I did work in Silicon Valley for well over 25
Mhm.
years. I was mostly into doing imaging, video, and cameras for consumer electronics.
Right.
So if you have a cell phone camera that you take pictures with, a lot of the tech that I was involved in goes in that. I wasn't working on surveillance or security cameras per se, but I do understand, how the
Right.
consumer
I
electronics.
guess I guess that was me taking a leap and to imply that these are kind of surveillance cameras.
They can be used as
Yeah.
surveillance. Yes, they can be used
Yes.
as surveillance, but it depends on how you yourself set up your applications and how you
Mhm.
use your cell phone.
Yeah, well, that's something we should definitely discuss because I think it's great for people to be able to identify the problem, but if we don't know any solutions, then it doesn't really do good for us to just be terrified of all the problems. So yeah, so we should definitely that's something people can take control of if they wish to. So let's definitely discuss that. So maybe you can give us a little bit of an overview. I know you've done a lot of research and you've kind of outlined like these 5 pillars that you perceive as being kind of the road to serfdom, if you will. Not as Hayek described it, but the techno-fascist type of takeover that it looks like they're trying
Yeah,
to.
in fact, I have a slide that I can share on your screen.
Okay.
But fundamentally, with this, the fourth industrial revolution and a new
Mhm.
international economic order, these are I'd say at the highest level, the two major transformations that are taking place in the world. And this
Right.
is all being driven by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. But the
Right.
digital transformation, it's important to understand. If you share my screen, I'll pull up that slide.
Okay. Let's pull that up. All right. There we go.
There you go.
Okay.
So, what this digital transformation is, what I call is the 5 pillars to enslave humanity, rather than the
Mhm.
5 pillars of the of the transformation. Uh,
Right.
and to understand this, one has to understand how data is collected, and then
Mhm.
so essentially we have the Internet of Things. This is the first pillar of of the transformation. This
Mhm.
consists of surveillance cameras as well as cameras that can be
Mhm.
used on your personal devices, the LED
Mhm.
street lights, and all the sensors and nodes that are collecting data throughout a
Mhm.
smart city and beyond. So this is the first pillar. So when data is collected, it's connected. It is sent over the network or the internet to the cloud. The cloud
Mhm.
being basically a bunch of servers that collect the data. So that's the second pillar. And the third pillar is artificial intelligence. These are primarily algorithms and systems in the cloud that are running on the cloud, which you know pass through the data and make sense out of it, and identify important things about any data that's collected, whether it's on a human being or an object or an automobile or activities. So
Right.
that's the third pillar. And then after AI extracts relevant data, it is put onto a blockchain, which is basically a digital ledger in the cloud. And then the blockchain, whenever you want to do any activities in the world, and since everything is digitalized and digitalization is also about conditional access. Then there's a cybersecurity protocol called zero trust, which will either allow you to do the activity that you want to do or deny you the activity based on your social credits and carbon credits, etc. And so this is what I call the 5 pillars to enslave humanity, which is the digital transformation. And the whole world, through corporations, are doing this digital transformation in the name of going high tech, but it's really about conditional access or denying humanity rights to
Mhm.
do based on their behavior and compliance. So that's really it.
Right. So where do I mean, we've certainly, I think most people, certainly my audience, are very familiar with hearing a lot of these concepts, but we don't necessarily know exactly where the evidence that all of this is being executed is. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of maybe each of the stages, the 5 pillars?
Yes, I can. I mean, so if people stop looking at their phones when they're out and about in their streets and cities, you will
Mhm.
notice that over the last 3.5 years, your towns and cities and highways and corridors between cities are littered with smart LED lights that are extremely uh, bright, extremely toxic, and one cannot look up at them. And they form a key part of the sensory network. So, all these smart LED lights on smart poles, I mean, that's visual evidence. And if you look at intersections, you will notice cameras going up in every part of the world at intersections. You
Mhm.
will notice radar sensors going up. So, these form the Internet of Things and the surveillance infrastructure where
I'm sorry
humanity
to
is going to be
interrupt.
living.
Before we go any further with that, I do want to ask
Mhm.
you about the LED lights. I know you commented on my purple, so I'm sure that's connected to that. But I'm curious how I've definitely seen them. I mean, I don't think anybody who's paying attention can deny, particularly in cities, that a lot of these lights have gone up and that they're very distinctively different than some of the street lights we may have seen previously. But what is the evidence to indicate that those lights are intentionally connected to an Internet of Things type structure?
Well, one can easily go to the specifications of the various companies making those lights and look at
Mhm.
the specifications, look at the luminosity that they are able to achieve. They are all
Mhm.
wireless computers, essentially. Each of these smart LED street lamps have a wireless computer. They wirelessly communicate with each other, as well as they wirelessly communicate with automobiles and devices that people carry that are walking under those lights, etc. So there's a continuous 24/7 data collection, sensory network that's been built with these lights in conjunction with um, wireless devices. So
Could
it's
you
very
possibly?
easy to go to websites of various companies that are building these
I was
lights.
going to ask if you could mention the names of any of these companies in case people wanted to
I,
investigate. It's
I've
something
got a
I've
lot
wanted
of
to look up.
I've got a lot of specs. I don't have the names right in front of me,
Okay.
but I mean Philips, which is in the Netherlands, they have a spin-off. I forget what the name of their spin-off is. That is doing a lot of these LED lighting, both for smart lights for the streets as well as uh, for inside smart buildings. Uh,
Okay.
and then, of course, everyone knows about the cloud. AI has been in the news for the last year, like never before.
Right.
And then blockchain, people might have heard about blockchain if they were involved with cryptocurrencies and bitcoins and stuff. Cybersecurity, one can go to companies like Palo Alto Networks and look at all their protocols and the kinds of technologies being developed uh, with respect
Mm.
to zero trust network access protocols, which will deny you access to devices and places and spaces and activities by default. And other ways to look at this is wherever there is a camera, there's a good chance that AI has access to your eyes, your face, and your emotions as a result. And it's always capturing data on you, and it's always scoring you and your well-being, etc. So this is tied into also the mental illness aspects that they talk about a lot in the last few years. So the goal is people need to understand that wherever you see a camera, you have the potential for AI to control you and manipulate you. And that's the long-term intention anyway.
Right, right. Can you talk about zero trust and what it is and what their plans are?
Sure, I can do that. So zero trust is essentially, in actuality, zero trust is about, it's a protocol in cybersecurity networks. So
Mhm.
we are going to, it's a protocol and it's called Zero Trust Network Access, to be precise, ZTNA. And there's ZTNA 1.0 and then there's ZTNA 2.0, which has started to getting implemented. But it's
Mhm.
really, we are going to be going from a world of implicit allow to default deny. And which means if you're on your device, for instance, and you have VPN, you put on, log in with a password. Once you get into your device, you can pretty much use your browser, your game, software, whatever other applications you're using. But default deny is that at every juncture, you're going to be denied access and you have to prove that you're trustworthy before you can access. And that this is where ZTNA 2.0 comes in, where through the camera, AI will be always looking at your eyes and your emotions and can decide whether you're a criminal or you're a good doobie, right? And it's
Mhm.
all
Yeah.
related to your digital identity through face recognition. So we are going to
Right.
be going from a world of, and it's really about conditional access. Do you have the trust score based on your digital currency of social capital and carbon capital, etc.?
Mhm.
So think of it as an inverted prison where everything is behind lock and key, and you have to keep unlocking access to everything all day, all night long. So whether you want to start your car,
Mhm.
zero trust comes in. It's,
Right.
and this is also that you are by
Yeah,
default the
they have
enemy of
that.
the state.
So sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, that's they put the infrastructure in the cars, right? The from 2026 on, all cars will have that recognition technology, the kill
No,
switch.
actually, that's probably already happening. I know from Europe. In Europe, I think it was required from 2021. They have.
I thought in the infrastructure bill in the United States, they said all cars made after 2026.
I know that's the infrastructure bill, but that's a red herring because it's been happening since 2003. I think all cars in the US that have been sold since 2003 have some sort of internet connectivity. And in the
Sure.
last several years, many of the modules inside your car are remotely controllable by artificial intelligence. So modules can be turned off. So them putting in a bill in 2026 is just taking the conversation away from the fact that it already exists.
Can you expound on that a little bit? Not necessarily just in terms of the kill switch laws. I definitely agree with you that it's already in place,
Mhm.
but I just remember that was in the infrastructure bill that they were going to execute it in 2026. But I'm curious about particularly just like things like the zero trust, the digital currency infrastructure, how much of that and the social credit system in general, how much of that do you think the infrastructure is already in place? Particularly, I'm asking for the United States because we know places like China, they use it. There's no secret about that. It's already up and running. But I think a lot of people think that, it would never happen in the United States. And what the reality is, from what I've seen, it looks like it's already in place. It just the laws haven't followed through yet, haven't been executed.
So have you ever used Uber and Lyft?
Right? Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So if you've been using Uber or Lyft, about 5 years ago or so, they started making it a requirement that after every ride you have to rate the driver or score the driver on a 5-star scale, and the driver scores you after the ride is completed. So
Right.
your social credits have already started with Uber and Lyft. The same thing with Facebook. So it's important to understand that this whole social credit system is not going to be executed by the United States. It's going to be
Right.
executed by private corporations that are buying and
Mm-hmm.
selling and exchanging data on you and your activities in real
Right.
time, all the time.
Yeah. Sure, I
And
understand that. However,
yeah,
I'm just asking because a lot of people think that, we have the right to privacy. They think that they're protected in the United States, and I understand that that's not the reality because we're essentially moving towards a corporate techno-fascist kind of globalist type of control grid. But
correct.
I think people they have a sense of false security, thinking that they will be somehow protected by the laws in the United States. And so I want to lay it out for people so they can really understand how this is being executed, and if there's any possibility that we can stop it, of course, that would be
Well,
great.
so there's multiple discussions here. Whether we can stop
Yeah.
it is one thing, and the other is uh, the protection of the laws of the United States.
Mhm.
Your privacy will be pretty much guaranteed because there's no human being that's going to have access to your data in any meaningful way. It's only going to be algorithms. So
Okay.
your data, which is going to be on a blockchain after AI processes the data it extracts from the IoT and the cloud, will be put onto a blockchain, and only corporations' algorithms will be processing that data of yours in order to allow you or deny you permissions through zero trust and your central bank digital currency. Even that
Mhm.
itself is not about central banking, it's really private corporations. So whenever you hear you know TV sound bites where people are trying to protect your privacy, or politicians are saying, I'm going to pass a bill to protect your privacy and blah blah blah, those are taking away the conversation from the fact that it should not be about your privacy. It should be the fact that you're being surveilled, the fact that there's data being collected on you. That's where the fight needs to be. That's where the
Mhm.
understanding needs to be, that if your data was not being collected in the first place through IoT sensors and the smart lights, etc., you would not even have to discuss anything to do with privacy or against privacy. So it's really
Right.
important to think through that. Like, who the hell has the right to take my data? But it's
Right.
happening. So the question to ask is, why is it happening? It's happening because of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Because in the name of sustainability, everything needs to be monitored, managed, and in the process, monetized.
Right. Yeah, let's go through this. I did pull this up, the 17 sustainable goals, and how are they using these goals in conjunction with the technology and the surveillance technology? How are they using that to implement these goals?
No,
Can
they
you
are
speak to some
using
of that?
that. No, they are not using that to implement. That's the they are masquerading to. They are. It's all a ploy in the
Sure.
name of controlling and surveilling and monetizing. They are pushing through corporations
I
the
maybe a
implementation
better
of the digital transformation.
Right, maybe a better way to ask this is what do they really mean by each of these things? What are they really trying to achieve?
Control and complete collapse of Western civilization to start with, and then complete domination of the world ultimately. That's what they're trying to achieve. But the stories that are being told to the world through the SDGs is no poverty, right? So they don't want anyone to be poor, but the language is all inverted. So
Mhm.
when they say no poverty, they want everybody to become poor. When they say no
Mhm.
hunger, it's about taking away natural farming and natural foods and move towards, artificial foods and vertical farming and 3D printed meats. When they talk about health, it's all about making sure that everybody's getting their jabs on boosters, as they keep announcing, virus and variations on a quarterly or half annually basis. So when they talk about good education for everybody in the world, it's about basically dumbing down society so nobody knows what the hell's going on. So it just goes
Mhm.
on and on.
Yeah.
And so one of the agendas of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which is also driven by climate action and global warming, etc., is
Mhm.
about achieving net zero carbon by 2050.
Yep.
And everything is linked to a digital ID and surveillance so that everything can be tracked, and based on activities and movement, they can keep computing carbon score of people and things and activities, right? So, and they are in the process, the data harvesting combined with fake legal instruments, they're manipulating human life as well as natural resources, right? And so the
Right.
goal is to measure, analyze, monitor, monetize, and then control everything. And this is the new international economic order linked to the sustainable development goals, where data is the new oil and carbon is really the new currency. Carbon and your behavior, social compliance.
Yeah.
So it's a very clever agenda, and it's been going on for a while. And they're using ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance, uh,
hmm
as the instruments by which private corporations are enforcing this with their suppliers, customers, and their employees. And then they
Right.
use diversity, equity, inclusivity as the variables for the S component of ESG. And if people have been observant, they've been using things like social justice and Black Lives Matters and
Sure.
LGBTQ, etc., for the last several years in order to have a certain type of behavior within corporations and their advertisements and stuff. And
Yeah.
governance is essentially what organizations within a company is in place in order to enforce all this. And so
Mm.
everybody gets an ESG score now, and we are moving from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. And the
Right.
compliance is essentially enforced by corporations, so you can't point a finger at your government that your government's doing it.
Right. Right. So they create a middleman to redirect
Mhm.
the blame. Yeah. So can you talk about the because you were saying how this is all going to be uh you know put through essentially like a token system is really what it sounds like. But what are they going to do to the current financial model in order to achieve that?
Well, the current financial model, if people have been reading history and about the Federal Reserve Bank and
Uh-huh.
observing the
The
value of the
creature of Jekyll
dollar,
Island. Yep.
the value of the dollar since the formation of the Federal Reserve Bank in 1913,
You keep it there.
1914 has already, the US dollar has already lost about 99% of its value since then. And now they're going for the last 1%. And as things get prohibitively more expensive with hyperinflation or stagflation, um, the corporations and the United States government, whether it's at state level or a federal level, will come with universal basic income to bail everybody out. And then eventually the UBI will be given through an app. And those apps
Mhm.
will then be linked to a digital ID. And then the money inside the UBI will be tokenized. And the tokenization really means that there will be conditions attached to the money,
Right.
which means you can only use the universal basic income to buy your food if you have enough carbon credits left for the month, or you've been socially compliant on various DEI aspects. So I made a slide on, you know, how the
Oh,
future of asset ownership will look like. And essentially,
okay.
it's linked to your digital ID. But
Mhm.
think about your money or your assets in the center. And so in the center is the information that's logged, likely on a blockchain,
Mhm.
where what the asset is, where it comes from, who owns it, etc. But it's surrounded by rules. So think of it, your assets in a cage with locks on it. What the asset can and cannot do, when can it do whatever it can. So these are called smart contracts. So
Mhm.
every asset will be locked, tokenized, and it'll have rules. And so if you own a car, your car ownership will be linked to rules because the car ownership will be tokenized, your house will be tokenized. So in the future, think of it as you can own your house if at all you own it. Actually, is a different question, but you can own your house if you become net zero compliant by 2030, 2040, 2050, which means you have to become net zero. You may have to do $200,000 worth of renovations, which you can't afford. And that's how private equity companies will come over and take over property. And that's one of the ways property is going to be confiscated from people. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it definitely does. I'm curious, where can people find those plans? So I've definitely seen that. I've definitely warned of that, but I'm the pushback that I get from a lot of people. I'm not disputing that any of that is exactly. It looks very much like what they're trying to implement, but where can people see that trail? Those
So
are the
there are
plans.
many ways. So there are many places to go. There's not one place that'll,
Great.
spill all the beans. But
Right.
if you read enough, all the beans are out there.
Right.
So I'd say start with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the World Economic Forum, UNESCO, World Bank, Bank of International Settlements. This will give you kind of the blueprint of
Yeah.
all the agendas at the highest level, and then how it's going to be executed. The best place from a socio-economic point of view is McKinsey, Deloitte, uh, Accenture, and a whole lot of these management consulting company, because they are the ones who advise boards and CEOs and
Right.
senior executives in large firms on how to, where the agenda is going to go, and this is how it should be implemented in the name of climate change, global warming, sustainability, etc. So their white papers has a wealth of information. If you want to understand what the future of key technology milestones are going to be, from AI to blockchains to autonomous driving cars, an excellent source of information is Gartner, Gartner. It's a technology think tank that publishes papers, etc., and literally guides the future on where venture capital and private equity money needs to go. So these are all excellent litmus tests, as well as guidance publications you can find in these companies.
Oh, that's great. I haven't heard of that think tank. I'm definitely going to look into that. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
But the others,
And then
I've
of
definitely.
course, at a local level, you can look at a lot of the smart growth initiatives happening at your local level with respect to sustainability. In some cases, it's called smart growth. In some places, it'll be called the comprehensive plan or the comp plan. That's what your city councils and mayors are going to be talking about. Most of them, I don't know, realize that they are helping along the tyrannical agenda while they accept money from the feds in order to allow the implementation of all the infrastructure of smart cities in their neighborhoods.
Most of them have no idea. I've actually brought it up to some of locally in political meetings, and most of them have no clue. They've never heard of it, and they tell you you're a crazy conspiracy theorist if you bring it up. So
use the word comprehensive plan next time.
Use the word comprehensive
comprehensive plan. Yes, comprehensive plan or comp plan. That's what they do. Smart growth, comprehensive plan, and then people should be aware of the community land trusts in their counties, land value capture, high density zoning, affordable housing. ICLEI is an organization which is an NGO that stands for the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. So these ICLEIs, they come in and they give money to local governments and counties, and then they sign paperwork and take away the rights and then start doing sustainable development activities.
Wow.
So I made this slide here for people to understand that they use the Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, and solution to implement these agendas at every level. And so they
Yes,
have
my
the
audience is
problem
very familiar with
created.
this.
Sorry.
Yeah, I said my audience is very familiar with the Hegelian
Yeah.
dialectic. We go through this
Right.
a lot.
So
There's actually, before you continue with the slide, I'm just going to share this with you because I think you might find this very interesting. I actually just released the episode discussing this, but I talked to a senator who said they brought in, it was through this group called Braver Angels, and it's an extension of the Masons, and they came in to do a seminar with the Senate.
Mhm.
Teaching them how to do essentially psychological operations using dialectical behavior training to weaponize the Hegelian dialectic essentially for psychological operation. Which I just thought was, he said he was pretty horrified, but he said most of them, it just went over their head. They didn't think it was any big deal. It was not concerning to them. But I was surprised that it was so overt that they were pretty much directly in your face,
Right.
overtly laying out those plans. So, but anyway, I didn't mean to derail, but I thought you might
No,
find that
that's fine.
interesting.
We can talk about other things if you want.
Yeah. But yeah, please pull back up the slide because I think that's
Yeah.
interesting for people to see.
I recently had recorded a presentation just a few weeks ago, so I've got the whole presentation and walked through the whole thing in 50 minutes on my YouTube channel if people want to go and
Oh,
check it
great.
out. Yeah. But
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I'll put the
so
link.
yeah, the problem reaction solution is, hey, there's global warming, climate change, and people should be digging further on how that is happening. And the reaction is save planet Earth, and the solution is transition the whole world into a new economic system, which is the new international economic order, through a digital transformation into the fourth industrial revolution, lock them up in smart cities, and eventually move to Web3, which would be uh, living your life inside a virtual reality headset more and more as time goes by. And the blueprint of this execution is coming from the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And the execution is being done by private corporations, public private partnerships, and non governmental organizations. And as I said, in your local councils and cities that are in lockstep with the NGOs that are operating locally, they will use sustainable development, growth, smart growth, comprehensive plans, etc. So people should be on a lookout for all this. And again, at the heart of this is your digital ID, because the digital ID linked to your activities and everybody's activities allows the collection of data and allows AI to score you and then put extracted data onto a blockchain via which a new currency is extracted and how value is generated. So we are going to
So,
move from value, like today's world, we create value, right? And that's how wealth is created by individuals and groups or companies. So we create value as human beings. But in the future of the new currency and the new international economic order, value will be extracted, not created. So it's something to think through.
yeah, can you expound on that a bit? Like they're going to put the consumer model on steroids, it sounds like.
No, when I say value will be extracted, means it's coming through your activities, not from what you create. So,
Right.
how little you
But
walk or how little you drive will result in the monetization in the new world currency. Your interactions with Facebook and other people and how you react to Black Lives Matter and all is generating your social credits or taking them down.
mhm.
So value, the people who are making money of human beings, they're extracting value by activities and compliance, not through what
Mhm.
you create.
Right. Right. I did a stream on this a while ago, but I had posted it as saying that I didn't know, I couldn't speak to the veracity of the source or if it was actually already in place, but that I had enough evidence to indicate that this is where they wanted to go. And it was this supposedly leaked document. So again, I still don't know I don't have access to classified documents, so I can't speak to that. But what I can speak to is that it looked like the reason I shared it was not to tell people like this is definitely, take this at face value. This is, 100% fact. What I shared it was the reason I shared it was because I feel like based on all the information that I have collected and all the data points that I've seen, this looks like exactly where they're trying to take us, whether or not it's already been, the infrastructure has already been put in place. But essentially what it was a supposed leaked document that showed that they had already created this. And I have to go look up the letters again because I'm blanking on the different classes they had created, but they essentially had created a caste system, these various classes that were they had already put people onto this UBI, and then through the UBI you had like an annual like a monthly disbursement that you would receive, and then based on your behavior you would have demerits, and you would either have your full allotment or you would have less than that. And there were certain people who would be exempt, that they were not going to be restricted, and then there was a restricted
Yeah, I
class.
think the letters, I forget what it's called, but it's the CSQR rating,
Yes,
CSQR.
that's it.
Yeah,
Yes,
which is common, sovereign, restricted, and quarantined. And
that's
so,
it. You
yeah,
got it.
there's a paper that I've got downloaded somewhere, and I'd read about that more than a
I,
year ago, I think.
exactly. Yeah, and I sorry I blanked on the name, but that's exactly right. And well, it was very concerning to me because we've heard Klaus Schwab and others of similar ilk who have been talking about creating a UBI based on some sort of a digital currency model that basically uses a social credit in order to determine how much of that you have access to, and then they restrict your freedoms based on that. So the argument for this leaked document was that the infrastructure is already in place, and that's I think where some of the debate is, because if it's already in place, then I mean that doesn't mean that it can't be fought against
Yeah,
still, but
I think
it's
it's
harder.
important to go back to the digital transformation slide when people want to think through it, saying there are thousands of companies working on each of those five pillars, hundreds to
Hmm.
thousands, right, worldwide, and each of them, they have interfaces, so they don't the infrastructure may not be in place fully in one might be behind the other, but
Hmm.
they all come together through communications, through the ICT, which is the information and communication technologies and interfaces. So there are international standards and protocols on how say AI algorithms have to work on certain cloud databases, right? So Amazon will have
Right.
its own cloud, and Google has its own cloud, and they may share certain interfaces, and one can buy data from the other, for instance. So
Right.
everything doesn't have to be in place all of a sudden. They incrementally will keep coming into place, and then everything will start working together seamlessly over time.
Right. Yeah,
But
that sounds
enough of the infrastructure is already in place that it can all the switches can be turned on at any given time, but they are not ever going to do that. They're just going to allow many switches to be turned on, so that when the transition is fully complete and we are in the new steady state system, most people won't even realize that we've transitioned.
wow. I have a couple of questions. So one is, I know you were involved in making, in building some technology. You worked in Silicon Valley, but what was what alerted you to make all of these connections to how they're using these technologies and the surveillance state?
So I started to get uncomfortable. So I was working in cameras for about since the early 2000s, specifically for cell phone cameras. But our organizations, we were selling cameras not just to the cell phone makers, but also we had organizations within the company that was selling to medical companies for the pill cam. And then
Hmm.
our tech would be taken, and then the security cameras and surveillance camera groups would take our technology we developed and put it inside their cameras. And so I used to find that uncomfortable, being a
Hmm.
lover of liberty and not liking surveillance.
Uh-huh.
I always detested security and surveillance cameras, and I
Hmm.
wanted to play no part in it. But as time went on, I started seeing more and more and more surveillance cameras, um, which made me even more uncomfortable. But then I think I was working on another initiative around 2013, 2014, where I was building a 3D camera based, you know,
Mm.
system, and had gone to speak with a venture capital arm of a Fortune 50 company, and they wanted to integrate my camera technology with smart cities. So I first learned of smart cities around 2014, and so my antennas went up further. And then as the COVID scam happened, and I started to see the actual infrastructure of smart cities going up all over the San Francisco Bay Area with the
Hmm.
smart LED lights and more cameras, then all the dots connected immediately as to what they were trying to do. And I
Wow.
was in 4 years ago exactly, I was in Shenzhen, China for an international optics conference, and a lot of the dots connected during the week I spent over there, because I could see what was happening and how people were behaving and how their social score and all was happening, even in 2019.
What did you see at the conference?
That there wasn't, other than the bathrooms, there was not a square inch that I walked around, whether it was inside the conference or outside or on the streets, where I was not being watched.
Wow,
There wasn't a
that's scary.
single square foot that you could go in Shenzhen where you are not being watched. And
Wow.
everybody there knows they are being watched, and everybody's always super compliant and well behaved. And they have fear on their faces.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, well, that's we definitely don't want that. Well, you talked about the 5G technology, of course the smart city infrastructure. Sounds like they're making a grid. So I have a couple of questions based on that. One is, what are the implications of? I've heard things about 6G and then 7G and how that's going to advance this whole interconnectivity. I wonder if you can speak to some of that. And then the other thing, which is related, is, are you familiar with the AI World Society that the UN 100 is working on?
I'm not specifically familiar with this society, but I'll look at it later this evening
Okay.
after this
Yeah. Well, I'll
discussion.
just give you kind of a cliff notes on that. I don't know. And then you can speak to the 6G, 7G. So essentially, they're doing something called like the Centennial of the UN. So, of course, the UN was created in 1945. And so they're imagining the world in 2045. And what they're doing is, in conjunction with this is Boston Global Forum and Michael Dukakis, who is a former governor of Massachusetts, and they are doing remaking the world, imagining the remaking the world towards an age of global enlightenment. And essentially, what this is they're creating an AI world society where they want to make the hub. This is at least what they've spoken of. They want to make the hub, the main hub, out of Ukraine. And they did a whole symposium talking about rebuilding Ukraine. They're, talking about how after the war, this tough time, we need to funnel all of this support into Ukraine to rebuild Ukraine, to make it into essentially this main hub for the AI world society. And then that will connect to these other smart cities that, of course, they've already started to build the infrastructure for. And this will build out an AI world, which, in my opinion, sounds kind of like a cyber Satan, but this is what they seem to be. This is, for them, it's the age of global enlightenment. So yeah, that's what
Yeah,
they're.
I am not familiar with this specific society, but I've come across many variations of this, and I've read a lot on this stuff. And
Yeah.
if people haven't, they should check out Unidroit, UNIDROIT. That's the unification of private law, and
Okay.
through the one of the UN bodies. There's also the Council of Inclusive Capitalism, which I think is an offshoot of the League of Nations, if I'm not wrong, or one of their branches. Uh, and so, if you start following the trail on all the documentation that is being driven by the Council of Inclusive Capitalism, Unidroit, and all, they're building an AI based, it's going to be a digital constitution for the new world. They're going to have
Hmm.
digital justice. They're going to have a digital bill of rights and so on and so forth. So
Right.
it's the same. I mean, if you go to the documents that are being published post Lahaina and Maui fires, they are going to be running an AI government. There was a reason why they were showing so much local government ineptitude and failure, because they want to move to AI based decision making through digital governments. So these are all
Yeah.
psyops to achieve the same end.
Absolutely. I think that's right. So, yeah, so let's talk a little bit about 6G and 7G. Are you familiar with their plans for that?
Yeah, so I think people should be aware that 5G, 6G, 7G, they stand for the generation of the wireless technology. So fifth generation, sixth generation, seventh generation.
Hmm.
And essentially there are two major components to this is the data bandwidth, is how much
Hmm.
data it can suck up from the IoT sensors and the cameras and the lights and send it to the cloud. And then the second thing is low latency, and that really means,
IoT, just for people listening, that's the Internet of Things, correct?
right, Internet of
Yeah.
Things.
Yeah.
And IoE is the Internet of everything. And so 6G is just more bandwidth and lower latency. That is the lag time between when data is collected and it reaches the cloud. So smart cities essentially sit atop 5G networks. So they're collecting data on us, sending it to the cloud where AI is, doing its thing. 6G will be more the underpinnings for cognitive cities. And what we are talking about is where cities already know your next move. And then who knows where 7G will go. But we are going to be moving from smart cities to cognitive cities. And then I'm going to bring up another concept here, which we haven't discussed, is Li-Fi, which is light fidelity. So all the modern buildings that are being built now and in the last few years, they have and lots of LED lights on their ceilings. And if people should go and study human-centered design of lighting, and this Li-Fi will be essentially a new type of optical wireless technology that will communicate between the LED lights above you and either your brain or your devices. And there are also companies that are doing research on how LED lighting can be used to transform your behavior.
Like optogenetics type things?
Optogenetics and other ways too. Optogenetics is directly with your brain, but in other
Mhm.
ways too. So I won't go into the details. There's a lot of stuff here, but people should go and study Li-Fi and human-centered design. And there's some very interesting papers out there as to what agendas can be achieved.
Wow. I'm very curious about the like the LED, because I know in the like alternative health space, the cosmetic aesthetic space, kind of like the midi spas, if you will, they're very big on using LED lights for healing, for positive effects. But it sounds like there's a lot of negative and detrimental effects that can be had as well. So can you
Yeah,
speak to
they're
any of?
extremely toxic to human health. They're bad for your eyes. They cause macular degeneration, retinal damage at the very least. Uh, they have a flicker frequency that is uh, very toxic. Um, and there's other agendas behind LED lights and then they have a color temperature that allows cameras to see much better in the dark at night. That's another thing.
Mhm,
And then
mhm.
LED lights, though these smart lights, the way they've been designed, combined with radar, they can spot a person with a gun or an AR-15 300 meters away, and in conjunction with some of those LED incapacitators, can be used to take out a person. So there are a lot of nefarious agendas behind LED lighting. I'm working on a presentation actually on just LED lighting, which I'm about a year behind schedule, but I'm still
Okay.
working on it.
Well, I look forward to seeing that. I will definitely be curious. Can you address, like, are there different colors that have different implications or different effects?
They can be different colors. Most of the street LED lights are blue LED lights, which are in the 470, 480 nanometers wavelength.
Mm-hmm.
But they are, I think they put some sort of filters or coating on top, which gives it the illusion that the lights are actually white. But they're really blue LEDs, and blue LED frequencies are the worst for human health and your eyesight.
Mm. Yeah, they're not comfortable. I don't like them at
Yeah,
all. They bother me. And I find they make me, when I'm in that kind of blue LED setting, it actually makes me feel very disoriented and depressed and anxious. That's just me personally. I don't know if other people have that
right.
experience, but I've definitely had that experience. So you were talking about the purple, and of course, I'm just curious because it's my favorite color. But you were saying that that's like the UN color, and I've heard this before. Why? Why do they have a thing with purple?
I don't know. I don't know the psychological aspects of it, but
Yeah.
I did a little commentary on my Facebook page maybe a year ago on the color
Right.
purple itself. I'll have to
Yeah.
find it. But there
Okay.
were many aspects of purple which tie into the agenda. One of the
Yeah.
most important one is the purple is also the color of royalty and domination.
Right. Right. Yeah. I have heard that. I just like it. I've always liked it. So, that's been my favorite color since I was, young enough to be able to say what my favorite color was. So,
Right.
so that's upsetting. But I feel like they have to take everything beautiful. um,
Yeah.
so then my other question would be about you're talking about the smart cities, and definitely can see how the technology would be used for things like geofencing and enslavement, and implementing all this surveillance tied to the digital ID. What happens for people who, there's a lot of people right now who are trying to go off the grid, if so to speak. I don't know that that's technically literally possible, but there are people who are trying to get out of the cities and homestead and grow their own food and be kind of as far off of the plantation, if you will. So what is the implications for them? What do you think?
I don't think that's a good long term strategy. It might work short term or mid term, because long term, I mean, the way the whole atmosphere is being manipulated, we may not be able to grow food if it's poisoned beyond a certain point. Right? There's a lot
Hmm.
of geoengineering going on, and I'm sure many of your audience is aware of that. And
Hmm.
with the
The cloud seeding.
geoengineering, different parts of the Earth's surface can be manipulated in ways that are not conducive to, off-grid living, maybe.
Yeah. When you say geoengineering, what aspects are you thinking? Like the cloud seeding or the?
The cloud seeding, and then the manipulation of weather in general after the cloud
Hmm.
seeding.
Right. What
They
are
call
they?
it solar radiation management. They'll call it stratospheric aerosol
Hmm.
injections. I mean, they have different names for it. But if people are reading up on stuff, I don't. I'm not an expert in those fields, but I can see with my eyes what they do here in Montana
Uh,
and
yeah, I
everywhere in
know.
the world. Pretty much, you go.
Yes, I when people try to argue with me that it's not real, I'm like, "Can you just look up at the sky? Does
Yeah.
this look like what you remember as a kid?" Because
Right.
it looks very different to me. I don't
Right.
remember like little crisscross,
Right. And
clouds.
I'm a pilot, and I've been flying for 20 plus years. And when I was
Okay.
learning flying, one of the main topics is weather. And so I had big fat books on weather.
Mhm.
And now suddenly there are new clouds. The books that I have from 20 years ago don't have these so-called crisscross clouds. And now they are updating websites on weather, and they are coming up with new cloud names to represent all the crisscross stuff happening in the sky. And so,
Wow.
and I think professional pilots are likely have gag orders that they're not allowed to speak about chemtrails.
So, do you think that, or do you think that a lot of them are being kept in the dark? Because when I talk to some, like, they're just, I don't know if it's cognitive dissonance or they just can't believe it. They just can't wrap their heads around it.
I don't know. I suspect the ones that know have signed non-disclosure agreements with their corporations that they're not allowed to talk about it, and I guess the rest of them it's cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, that seems very, very possible. So, do you have any thoughts on how we can preserve the free will of humanity and
By
prevent us
way,
from?
I think yes, I do. I think,
Okay.
of course, raising awareness is most important, which you are doing, and I'm trying on my
Mhm.
little platform. I mean, I don't have a platform. I just speak with people like
You're
you and
you're doing
others.
great, and you're doing phenomenal research and really piecing it together. I'm grateful. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Raising awareness on what is happening, why it's happening,
Mhm.
and how it came to be. Uh,
Mhm.
and I think the only place we can actually address it is in local communities and your county, because we don't really have representation at state or federal level anymore.
I agree
This
with
is
that.
locally. You have to take the bull by the horns, get enough people aware, and then build local networks, and get rid of, undo the smart city infrastructure. That's the very least we must all do, because if we can't get rid of the smart city infrastructure in your local areas, then you are being computed as you leave your house. I mean, you
Well,
are
I
being
just saw
computed
that.
by your devices, by your personal devices also. You are being surveilled and computed and scored, etc. But at least at that level, you have a choice to minimize interactions, right? With whether it's
Right.
with social media or your devices at home. But when you go out to retail places which are littered with cameras and surveillance, when you go out to your streets and you're being surveilled through intersections and every smart corridor between towns and cities, that's not okay.
Mhm.
Why are we okay with it? I'm not okay with it, but most people seem okay with it. And if you're
Well,
okay
and
with it, then you're okay with tyranny coming in permanently for you, your kids, your grandkids.
absolutely. I'm definitely not okay with it. I would also add the airport security. That's a huge means, from what I can see, of biometric surveillance and data collection and creating a larger infrastructure for being able to control people. That's what it looks
Yeah,
like.
absolutely. In fact, think about 9/11. What happened within weeks of 9/11? We had a
Oh, yeah.
TSA in place before you could bat an eyelid. TSA was in place in every airport in the world, effectively. Uh,
I just looked up. Have you heard of a company called Maximus Inc?
repeat, please.
Maximus Inc.
No, I don't think so.
No? Okay. Yeah, I just looked up like their list of patents and they had a patent that was I'm seeing if I can find it now actually. But they had a patent for airport security and they were actually working on this patent I think they first filed for it in 2000 and then it went into effect in 2001. They're a government contractor, so they have all of these contracts with companies like Lados and a lot of these government contracted technologies that they're very involved with. They did the whole infrastructure for Obamacare. They are working on a lot of future like Medicare and Medicaid type of technological infrastructure plans. I'm trying to think what else. They were very involved in child protective services. So they're kind of a monster. I think they have 34,000 employees, and they have bases pretty much worldwide. But they mostly work with government contract. But they did the patent on this airport technology that has now been ramped up, and they keep updating the technology. They're very involved in that. So um, yeah, but now they have even here, in Nashville when I left, they were doing like retina scans and
Yeah,
they do.
biometrics. Yeah,
Mhm.
biometrics is important to them because that's going to be linked to the digital ID. And once your biometrics linked to your digital ID, that then you're under complete surveillance everywhere you go, essentially. And
Right.
you said it's called Maximus Inc.
Maximus Inc. Yeah, very few people seem to have heard of it, and it seems to have their tentacles everywhere.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, and
they're
I mean, airports are the ultimate place where you train free people
Um,
to act like
to be
slaves,
exactly. That's
right?
exactly
Because
right.
in the name of security and safety,
You got it.
people behave like slaves. And after 9/11, most Americans dutifully would accept anything at airports.
So true. So true. I
Yeah, and
always
then
say that it's building it's training people to become compliant global citizens. That's
that's right.
exactly what it feels like.
And
Yeah.
then a lot of the airports now are being upgraded with LED lights that are following you everywhere you're going in the airport, and they're communicating with wireless devices there, and they're collecting data sets of how people behave in airports
Mm.
with everybody's devices and movements, and so they can extract data. I mean, of course, it's they are telling you that they are doing it for efficiency purposes. So if they see too many long lines outside a cafe, that means they have to open a second cafe and all that stuff. But that's all the masquerading behind the agenda that they do.
Of course. Of course. I've heard you mention the Internet of Eyes. Can you talk about that?
Essentially, yeah, that's a phrase that there's a venture capital firm in New York City that was hosting a conference a few years ago, and they had a paper that they had just published called "The Internet of Eyes," and it's really about the cameras. It's about artificial intelligence and its ability to be watching everything all the time. That's
Mhm.
effectively the Internet of Eyes.
Yeah,
So
the
we
artificial
have cameras in our cars looking at us. Our cars themselves are sensors, and
Mhm.
eventually there'll be autonomous robots. I mean, any modern car today has at least 16 cameras. In another 3 4 years, an average car will have anywhere from 20 to 25 cameras, both inside and outside, including radar and lidar and near infrared sensors and polarization cameras. So every car has the ability to see inside and out, and it's helping AI collect data on the world all the time.
Internet of Eyes, Applied Computer Vision in the Enterprise.
Yeah.
This was a document from March 12, 2019. So,
Yeah, no, this
which means
preceded the Internet of Eyes that I'm talking about was LDV Capital, I think 2017 or 2018.
okay. Yeah, so which means they've been working on it way before
Yeah.
that, obviously, if they're making the white
Yeah,
papers and making
I also co-founded two camera startup companies. One is still in existence. So I
oh,
had a I have a f- I had and I still do have a fairly good insight into you know how much how advanced vision is getting, computer vision and cameras are getting, and what the future
mhm.
might look like.
Wow, it's gonna allow objects to see is what this document, and it's from May 13, 2016, is what it says. That's the headline. So basically the objects, so robots will be able to see. Well,
Yeah, they can
that's
already
a
see. They can already
yeah,
see.
they
It's
have
not.
those goggles that they give people.
Yeah, no, no. I mean, so vision is not just about seeing color. It can also, or visible light. It's also seeing in invisible light. So
Mhm,
you can be, you can have a near infrared, or you can have
mhm.
far infrared. You can have thermal frequencies. You can have visible light cameras, which we have in our phones. And then there are other ways to see is through lidar and time of flight cameras, for instance. So there's a lot of sensors that are used for robots to see, and then there's a concept called sensor fusion, which then recreates the 3D world in real time.
Wow. So what would the implications of that be? Because I think a lot of people, I'll just share kind of where I'm coming from in asking that, because I think a lot of people, the argument is that the AI can only do what it's being, what the input is giving it. So it really is just it's an algorithm that's machine learning, but it doesn't have, I mean, right now there's no evidence for sentience. But I know that seems to be their goal. They essentially, I don't know that there is a singularity, but that the singularity is near, and that's what they're trying to create, is what it seems to be. Um, what are your thoughts on this advancing technologies, and then what could be either the nefarious intentions behind it or the unintended consequences of it?
So you already put up the pictures I was going to give the answer to. Is one of the implications is our move from uh, our move towards self-driving cars or autonomous vehicles. So, and a self-driving car or level 5 autonomous driving car is essentially a robot on wheels.
Hmm.
And the
Now the
previous,
military wants to use autonomous drones, but yeah.
yeah, absolutely, they're already in existence.
But they want, yeah, but now they want to make it, they're trying to get justification for it, and they want to
Yeah.
use them.
Yeah, because everyone is a terrorist, right? A US
Right.
citizen is an enemy of the state, and you're a terrorist. And so the three-letter agencies want to surveil you and be able to take you out when it wants, right? Through
Hmm.
autonomous drones or whatever. But really, think of it as whether it's an autonomous drone or an autonomous driving car, a self-driving car. These are robots, right? And they're connected to the internet. Therefore, AI sees what it sees, and anytime these robots have an updated version or map in real time, all the robots are updated in real time.
Hmm.
So
Right.
the long-term implication, I don't see anything good coming from AI personally. It's basically an all-seeing eye, and it is about ultimately having full control of every object, every person, everything that moves, because it can control, right? And
Right.
earlier what you were talking about was depends on the input. Well, that's only a large language model, kind of like a chat gpt. A
Hmm.
chat gpt is only a type of an AI software where a human being gives it an input, and then it goes, does its thing, does its searches, and it's a generative transformer. But
Hmm.
the when we go to robots, the input's not coming from what we are feeding it in as in going onto a keyboard and giving it input. The inputs are coming from the world around it through the sensors in real time.
Yeah.
So just think about like in a very dark scenario where self-driving cars can be used as executioners, right? It sees
Yeah.
you on the road and it comes to the conclusion that you are a terrorist and you need to be taken out in real time.
That's pretty scary. I've
And you won't
seen
have it, and
all of
nobody has control. Nobody has control.
right. I have seen these videos with these robots, and they talk about how they must take out humans at any cost possible because humans treat them like property, and they're very angry.
Was there a
But there's
movie
like
there?
a lot of these videos. It's pretty scary to
Yeah,
watch. Yeah.
yeah. I don't know
So
whether
if
they are just about scaring people, or is it predictive programming? I'm not sure.
right, I know. I'm not sure either, but either way, I don't think it's just a coincidence that we're seeing these videos
Yeah, there
of
you
these
go. These
robots.
are autonomous drones.
Yep. They autonomously decide to kill humans. Yep. And this was pretty recent, but I'm sure it's been I'm sure they've had them for much longer, but they're just now sharing it with the public. Do you think that this technology, this infrastructure they're building will lead to like what's the connection to the transhuman and post-human world that they want to build?
I have a lot of thoughts on it. I'd prefer not to have that discussion uh, in any major way right now. But
Okay.
I mean, so you have to kind of go back to the day when you bought your first computer for your home, personal computer, and when your internet came home. Maybe it was the 90s. I think the first time I had a computer in my house and connected it to the internet via a baud modem was in 1995.
Okay.
But most people, I think, got their personal computers in the late 90s. And then a large transition to the rest of the world happened in the 2000s.
I had a
But
computer in the home much earlier, but yeah. But yes,
yeah,
that's probably
few
true for
people
a lot of
like
people.
had those Ataris and all probably even earlier. But
Right.
I got my first computer in my house in Silicon Valley in 95. So
Mhm.
when you have your internet and your computer at home, you are interacting with a machine, right? And while there
Yeah.
was not a whole lot of feedback coming from software, or there were no websites in the mid 90s in any meaningful way and all that, so there was very little feedback loop which was controlling your mind.
Mm-hmm.
But as more applications came online, the more you are communicating with your computer and the machine. There's a concept called a cyborg, which is a cybernetic organism, and cybernetics is a way to manipulate man or machine or both with a feedback loop.
Mm-hmm.
So where we are today with 25 years of internets in our homes, we have all become cyborgs, and we've all been getting neuralistically programmed and uh, programmed through feedback loops on our interactivity with software and the cloud and the machine.
And
And
social media make
we are already being transitioned from what a human is.
right.
You see what I'm saying? So,
And social media amplifies that
and
like
social media amplifies
exponentially.
that, and then virtual reality with your digital twin will amplify that further. Because with
Right.
your digital ID will be we already have a digital twin, right? Like, so when you go to
Right.
Facebook and you're interacting with Facebook, it's really your digital twin once you are on the property of Facebook. And but you'll have 3D avatars, and your digital twin will be interacting with my digital twin in the future.
Right. I've seen I mean, of course we've seen like all of these AI pictures that they've created, they're essentially avatars, but they're replications of us. There's now a lot of they're using it in the art entertainment realm. Just did a show pretty recently on the AI and the moral dilemma, and I showed images of like there's like a songwriter, and you see her singing, and she writes, she produces the music, it's all AI generated.
Right.
And it's right now, when you look at her, you can kind of see that this isn't fully human. When you listen, if you're pretty keen, you can tell. And I think even now a lot of people who have good discernment can still read something and differentiate between that's written by a chat GPT type of AI versus an actual human. But my argument was that as more of this data is collected and more of this, you described the feedback loop, and I think that's exactly right, because as more of this is being put out, then people will have less ability to discern between real and virtual. We already see
Yeah.
this with social media platforms where people start arguing with bots, literal bots. They're having full on debates and discussions with bots, and they aren't aware. They think that there's a person on the other end.
Right.
And we know that this is true, that there are bots who are doing this. And now we have SAG, the Screen Actors Guild. They came to their resolution, and this is one of the things I talked about, where I'm not happy with the agreement they came to, because a lot of people think, oh great, now they're not locked into AI using their likeness. But what they really did, in my opinion, is they incentivize the actors, because now you get paid on the residuals, and you get paid to have your likeness used for AI generation. And so this is just more machine learning input that is being generated, and then it is going to be funneled out And I think the lines are going to become increasingly more blurred for what is real,
Can,
what is,
can you
yeah.
tell me what this likeness? I did not read the resolution, so if you can spend, because there may be something more to it than what meets the eye. What is this
I'm
likeness?
sure there is. I'm sure there is. I actually only read the summary. It is a very long document, but I read the summary bullet points because the SAG always puts out a summary of their resolution documents, and it essentially says that so the likeness. So if you sign that they can use your likeness, they can use obviously your image, your picture, video, your voice in order
So
to
name, image, and likeness. Name, image, and likeness.
Mhm.
NIL. So you know what
Name
that is
it.
about? You know what
What
that
is
is
that
about?
about?
That's a social credit system they're starting in the SAG in your industry. Name, image, and likeness. It's a social credit system that will transition into your money getting tokenized through an app via a digital ID. That's what it's about. And they
So
used in college sports in America, they introduced a name, image, likeness since 2019, 2020, where all college athletes now can use their NIL to make money.
yeah,
And
that's
people,
exactly what this is. That's what the resolution is that
yeah,
they
so
can use it,
basically,
they can get residuals on it. Yep.
it's a
They can
precursor to your digital currency with social credits. That's what it's about.
Wow. That makes perfect sense. I mean, I was very unhappy with the resolution. I know a lot of
Mhm.
people were cheering it and they were super excited about
Yeah,
it, but this did not sound good to me at
yeah.
all.
So think about it
Um,
as if you're a star athlete in your
mhm,
university and you're getting paid, say, $250,000 a year. Some are getting even as much as $1 million a year as a
sure.
student athlete. When they transition you to a social credit digital system, will you say no?
Right. Right.
So this
So
is how
is there
they. This is one of the ways they're going to get all the youngsters.
right. They entice you. They lure you in. It's a too good to refuse kind of deal. How
Mhm.
can we prevent a digital system from being implemented? Do you think there is any way to stop it?
I mean,
A
there is
digital
technically,
currency?
but I'm not optimistic that it can be stopped because people are going to be lured into it by one way or another, right?
Hmm.
Either through the SAG NIL or through the athletics NIL or through UBI or through
UBI.
the smart cities data collection where they're scoring you. But as I said, the only way to stop this whole transition and control system and tyranny is to undo the hardware infrastructure of smart cities. That's kind of the most potent way to stop it. But right now, I'm not optimistic.
Right. So, and that would be at the local level. People would need
That's
to
right.
fight back locally on the smart cities in their area.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know. Yeah, this is Chattanooga. That's up on the screen.
Tennessee. Yeah,
Yeah, in Tennessee, they're a smart city for sure. And you do see all the lights. So the lights are the thing I get pushed back on all the time. That people tell me that's crazy, and the lights don't do anything.
okay, ask the question. Ask the question earlier.
Mhm,
If a street had zero lights, there used to be
yeah.
these, high pressure sodium or low pressure sodium yellow lights, which were reasonably pleasing to the eye.
Mm,
Uh, there would be either 0, 1, 2, 3 on an average length of a street between two blocks. Why do you
mhm.
need 20 of them now? Where there were no lights on the highway, why do you need hundreds? Like, aren't your lights from your automobile enough to see the roads?
Well, not always. I do think you need some lights, but you don't need these like blue
Yeah,
weird.
and you don't need them every 20, 30 feet apart or 20, 30 yards
Yeah,
apart.
right, right. That's definitely true. And they do. We know they have all these surveillance cameras because they started that with the red light cameras, right? And those I was so opposed to because to me that's your car should be an extension of your home. So you talked about privacy and how that's kind of a false a false premise, which I understand. However, my car is an extension of my home. There should not be street lights taking pictures of me in my car. And that's what they do. And
the cameras
the
are taking
laws around that, you can fight that. And you can fight that because it is not constitutional for that reason. So they actually, and most of them,
what is unconstitutional?
to
What is
be taking pictures,
unconstitutional?
of you inside your home, inside an extension of your home, which is your car.
Are you a U.S. citizen?
Well, so you're saying that if you're a U.S. citizen, then you
It's
can't.
not. Yeah, it's totally legal for them to surveil you if you're a U.S. citizen.
It's not legal for them to take pictures of
It
you
is.
inside your home.
You're a
without...
14th Amendment. You're a 14th Amendment citizen. Therefore, you're property of the United States federal government, and therefore, property has no rights. As property, you don't own property, and you have no rights.
All right, I see where you're going with that. Well, I will tell you that people who have fought back on, first of all, they were demanded in many places to take them down because they were deemed unconstitutional. And many places, if you fight, any kind of, punishment or, fees that they may charge you on it, that many cases I know have won because it is unconstitutional, because it is considered an extension of your home. So you are supposed to have reasonable privacy, which means that when you're inside your home, that you do not have people taking pictures of you randomly. So that is, but I understand what you're saying. You're making a different case that if you're a citizen, then you're essentially property, and that you've contracted to be property.
That's right.
Yes. That I do understand. I've done shows with some people who have actually taken out their, like out of the Bank of London, their number of the trust that's been made on them and their value.
Yeah, I've heard that. I have not seen anything. I don't have that from of mine.
Yeah, I've only heard it. I've only heard it from people who claim they've done it firsthand, but I haven't actually seen it, firsthand. So. Yeah, I can't speak to it beyond what I've heard secondhand. So, but I know more than one person who's done it. I've known multiple people who claim to have done it and have seen their value, which apparently was pretty high. So that was interesting. And that's all based on, of course, the birth certificate and Social Security, you
Right.
being a citizen. So, yeah. So so you think that there is potential to stop the smart cities, but it would have to be done at the local level. And that's where you would recommend people starting.
Yeah, and there's a group in Idaho that I started to help out, and I did some live streams with their groups in December of last year. So about a year now I've known them, and they are having some success locally in northern Idaho.
Great.
They've been able to stop a traffic data management center for collecting data. They've been able to, I think, push back on 2 5G installations in their county, and they're fighting for a third one now. So it requires unity, and it requires unity in numbers. So every time there's something in their county, about 300, 400 people show up each time. And so that's the kind of numbers at the very least we need. In Montana, there doesn't seem to be much of a fight here. Like, even though people have been, educated, I've been doing live talks here for 2 years or more. But there's not much of a fight here.
I know there's also been some initiatives in various states and local areas around the digital currency to ban the implementation of digital currency. And I think that's a huge start as well.
No, it's a big red herring. It's a big red herring because the digital currencies are not going to be done by... like banning digital currency by a state has no meaning, because the digital currencies are going to be done by private corporations through zero trust and social credits and carbon credits. So it's being driven by UN SDGs.
Right.
So the state governments banning digital currencies is meaningless. It's the same like what they did in Montana. People were upset about facial recognition. So the Montana legislature, they passed they passed a bill saying no facial recognition in Montana, and I was trying to advise the state legislators and state senators that that's a meaningless thing, because facial recognition is not going to be done by the state of Montana anyway. It's going to be done by servers residing on Facebook, Google, and Amazon, and private corporations.
Right.
But it gave the
That's
illusion to most of the Montanans. They're so happy we'll have no facial recognition in Montana. So
so
it's just meaningless
unless you ban that
unless you
corporation
ban
from
the
using
hardware
it.
infrastructure. No, and unless you ban the hardware infrastructure from collecting data, banning facial recognition is meaningless.
So could the state do that though? Ban it in that. That's what I mean. Ban the
No,
corporations
they
from
have
using
done
it. In
it.
that.
They banned facial recognition in Montana, but except for law enforcement and FBI and CIA and blah blah blah, whatever.
Right.
But it's meaningless, right?
So one of the documents that was pulled up was an article about Tennessee suing BlackRock against the ESG strategies. So now BlackRock would be technically a private, although it's really a private-public partnership.
It's a private
But
equity company. It's a private corporation. So
it is,
they
but they work. I think in many ways a public-private partnership, because they work so closely with the governments
the feds,
yeah.
Well, you do know that a public-private partnership is really a private-private partnership, right? And we won't go
Yes,
into further detail.
I get it. I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. Yeah. So I don't know what. So what were your thought? What would your thoughts be on what we could do with the corporations and how we could work to stop them?
Don't allow
Is
your
there
data
anything?
to be collected. Don't allow your data to be collected. Don't fight
So
for
just,
privacy after your data is collected. Don't allow your data to be collected.
but how do people do that other than going completely off the grid? Like, how do people stop
No.
their
So
data?
again, there's two aspects to it, right? One is
Right.
your private devices
Yes.
and the smart city hardware infrastructure.
Right.
On a private devices, you do whatever you wish to do for your own level of privacy. I can't tell you what to do.
Sure.
But on the smart city side, we should be undoing the hardware infrastructure and then rejecting going into retail stores which have surveillance devices.
Mm,
Because once you enter, say, a Target or a Walmart or pick your retail store, you're
right.
on their property, and implicitly you give them the rights to do whatever they want on their property. That's the way
Yeah.
contract works.
Sure.
So
Right.
if let's say if 80%, 90% of the people stopped going to the stores, either they would remove the surveillance cameras or the store would close, right? And if the
Yes.
store closes, you can go and shop locally where the people don't have cameras.
Yes. So this is another reason why they're trying to shut down all the small businesses, because
That's right, because the small businesses may not comply by surveilling and putting their cameras connected to Dropbox or Amazon Web Services, because then AI has access to all the data of all the people who come in and what they buy, etc., etc.
right. And this is not just online. This is in the physical domain.
In the
you're
physical
talking
world,
about.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's something people can do. Hopefully people will start to do that, but definitely to fight against the infrastructure locally.
Yeah.
So
I
you were
think
saying
go ahead.
no, continue that train of thought.
No,
And then
what I
I'll ask.
wanted to say was that if people can get together locally, discuss these ideas, form groups, go
Yeah.
and do local education to your, mom and pop shops in your counties and towns and stuff, educate them on what's going on. They become the front of your resistance locally on not putting up cameras, talking to their customers, etc. Even go and talk to the people who are working at the big retail stores, because many of them will be freedom loving, but they don't know it.
They just don't know. Yeah.
Basically what happens is if I go to a store and you say, why have you put up cameras? Oh, we've had a lot of theft recently. I said, all these years you never had theft, and suddenly last 1 year you have so much theft. Like,
Right.
this has nothing to do with theft. It has everything to do with doing tracking everybody in the store, what products you're putting into your cart, digital ID and facial recognition. And then with the theft will also come moving products behind plexiglass doors with 3D cameras, so
Yep.
that zero trust will not allow you to open that door when you want to pick up extra beef for the month because your carbon credits have expired. So there's multiple things at play here.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of that video. I'll never forget it in 2020. I think it was a TikTok video that was circulating. And the music was super dark and dystopian, and it was all these stores with the plexiglass, and they would have the facial recognition, and then you couldn't enter. They would be like, your score is too low. It was just horrific. But I saw that video circulating. Just the way it was done was just very, I mean, the whole concept is obviously horrifying, but the way that it was done, it was very, very eerie. But I'm wondering, I recently, not too long ago, walked into this gas station. I can't remember. I think it was a Mapco, but they had this technology where you have the cameras all over the store,
Mhm.
so it's watching you, and then you take your items, and as you go up to checkout, it's one of these self checkout type things. It's already tracked everything you've picked up,
Yeah.
and then it's already rung it up,
I have
and it's
not experienced that personally, because I don't like to go into such stores. I mean,
right.
Amazon Go actually had its those stores go
Yes,
live about in Seattle maybe 5 years
yes,
ago, and in San Francisco about 3 years ago, I think.
I remember that.
So
Yes, that was
yeah,
terrifying. I
they're
remember in
all
that one
3D
episode.
cameras and visible light cameras and you just walk out of the store and it deducts it from your Amazon account or whatever app there is.
Yeah. No, I remember
So
that too. But that's essentially what they're setting up. And I mean, I didn't know that this gas station had that. But of course, they're bragging about it, and they were, putting it on full display and talking about it and doing all sorts of videos and promos. And they were like, "Look how convenient this is.
yeah,
You don't
because
have to do anything."
if I'm a gas station owner and I'm paying my attendant $25 an hour or $20 an hour for a
Right.
24-hour I'm spending quite a lot of money. And if some company says, hey, I've got these free cameras and software and I'll give you a free test run for 6 months, and after that, for so many dollars a month, you just connect it to the cloud and we'll take care of everything. And as an owner, if I can save a few $1,000 in paying an employee to sit there, I'll surely do that.
Right.
Plus,
And
my
that's the
insurance will be cheaper. My insurance will be cheaper because now there's little chance of my employee getting gunned down by somebody trying to, rob my gas station.
It's true. And that is the argument I keep hearing for a lot of the AI infrastructure is efficiency, and cutting costs. So a lot of people who,
Hmm.
whether it be, I've heard this in the film industry, I've heard it in, yeah, certainly retail, like, like a gas station example you just made. There's a lot of just practical kind of incentives for people. But in the long term, the application seems pretty dystopian.
Yeah. Plus, with net zero 2050, after 2035, many states like California and New York are going to ban the sale of internal combustion engine automobiles. And so there will be no gas stations in a few years, probably,
Right. Wow.
because there's a shift to electric cars, right?
Yes. That's interesting. I didn't think about that. No gas stations, because could people still have gas cars, or will they not?
They may be at the 0.00001% may be
Yeah.
allowed to keep gas cars, and so they'll get their gas delivered to them because they can afford it.
So I want to go back to that, because you had said you don't recommend the whole off-grid strategy because of what they're doing with the geoengineering and the soil, the effects on the soil. But it does seem like that's the reaction a lot of people are having, is that we
Yeah.
should.
So I did not say I don't recommend it. I said it's not a
Okay,
good long-term strategy.
right. That is what you said. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, short term, medium term, it'll be nice because then you're not living in a toxic smart city, right?
Right.
With the LED lights and microwave towers and millimeter waves and all that. But I think the resistance has to be local. If
Mm-hmm.
the resistance is local and if we undo the smart city infrastructure, then the smart city does not capture your data, then you don't have to worry about privacy and you don't have to worry about your social and carbon credits being computed in real time all the time. So locally, that system fails. Now, if we can do that for one county in the United States, it can be replicated in all 13,000 plus counties, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that is one of those things where if that county wins, people will probably,
Want to
be
flock to that
flooding to
county.
that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They'll flood in,
Yeah.
and
But
yeah,
the point is
then
that that demonstrates that it can be done
done.
or undone.
Yeah,
I mean, I should say that can be the smart cities can be undone. But again, as I see, I'm not seeing a fight with Americans right now.
right.
And
And why
what
do
I'm
you
saying
think
is
that
most
is? Do
people
you
are
think
still asleep. Most people are still
do you
asleep.
think it's
But
right
the
that they're
ones
not
who are,
aware?
but the ones who are not asleep, uh, they don't seem to have enough courage. I'm saying there'll be a few stray courageous people, but by and large, I don't see enough courage.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that there's also an element of people are bombarded and overwhelmed and distracted? I mean, there's like it looks like everywhere I turn, there's, another psyop, and it looks like everywhere I turn, there's another crisis. So I think people
I think
feel
that
like,
that is one. That is one. The other is there's enough bread and circuses, right? There's Monday
yeah,
night football now, Sunday night football, Thursday night football, college football. There's NBA, NFL. You just like there's almost nothing. There's no night where there isn't some major sporting event on television. So as long as you're watching sports and watching your Netflix and your Amazon, the hours seem the same as they were 10 years ago or the 15 years ago, right?
right.
Like you have to really do deep thinking and connecting the dots to understand the gravity of what is likely to come. I mean, it's coming. It's the question is how many of us are going to resist it?
Right. And can we, at the very least, slow it down? Because it seems like it's
Yeah.
ramping up. It does seem
Oh
like
yeah,
they
it's
are.
ramping up. Litmus test is keep checking for the LED lights and the cameras in your neighborhoods and your cities. That's the litmus test of whether this is happening or not. And when
Yeah.
people tell me, oh, people are waking up, I said, yeah, but what are they doing about it?
Mm-hmm. Do
Tell me
you
how
think?
many LED lights, smart LED lights have been undone in America since,
Right.
me or others started to raise awareness on what's happening with smart cities.
Right.
Zero
There
that I
were.
know of.
Yeah, that's well, hopefully more there will be more. What are your thoughts on there were a lot of theories around the injections in you know the COVID injections, and that the kind of track and trace technology, and that being connected to like a 5G or some sort of infrastructure. Do you have any thoughts on that, or
I have read a lot on that stuff. I have thoughts. I think the biggest takeaway about the injections was to train people for a vaccine passport and a digital ID.
mm-hmm.
And
Right.
earlier, you would show a paper certificate to go into a store saying, I took my shots.
Uh-huh.
Tomorrow, it'll be your digital currency linked to your digital ID where you won't have to show any paper because the camera and facial recognition will clear you to open that door to get your stuff or to enter a restaurant or a grocery store. So
Right.
I'd say that
And
was the primary, training
sure.
ground for a digital passport linked to biometrics, facial recognition, and digital ID.
Yeah.
And there's
I know.
possibly others.
Mhm. Yeah, this is
There you
the,
go.
TSA pre-check,
Hmm.
yeah, facial recognition digital ID solution. There, I definitely. I mean, I think, of course, that the travel, airport security has been one of the largest ways of being able to implement all of this. But I'm seeing it in other countries. Certainly, like the UK just did their whole, where we have a digital wallet. Now we need a digital ID to connect the two. And
Hmm.
they just approved that. So that's setting up that infrastructure. But
Right.
as you said, that this is, I think in the United States, I hope we're not going to go that far in terms of
Oh
it
no,
being a federal.
we are going to go that far. We
Well,
are going
I
to go
think
that
what you
far.
pointed out is it's going to be done through the corporations. So, and it's going to be done through the smart cities. It's not going to be done as a federal kind of implementation. Or do you think it will?
Okay, so no, so I think, yeah. See, real I. You remember Real ID after nine
Hmm.
eleven? There was a big push towards
I
Real ID.
do, and now
So real
most
basically
states
a
have it.
digital biometrics based. It'll become a digital ID because
Yeah.
TSA said, I think earlier it was 2021, then they changed it to
Yes.
2024 maybe for in
Yep.
travel, right? Now,
2024. No, I thought it was September 20 of 21 that they.
yeah, then they postponed the date for
Oh, they did.
making it.
Okay,
Yeah, they did.
interesting.
They postponed the
Okay,
date, and
deadline is to May 7, 2025. Interesting. Okay.
yeah. So now what happens is, if you notice, I don't know if you've traveled internationally in the last few years, but
Not in the last few years. That
if you
was intentional.
haven't, so what I noticed was when you travel internationally, the lines for getting in after you when you're coming back to the US, the lines are really long for going through immigration, like really
Okay.
long, and you could be waiting there anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
if you had
If you
uh,
have a
if you have
pre-check
that
or
global, no, pre-check is less. This called global.
no, I know what you're
Uh,
talking about. It's a
yeah,
global. I don't know
uh,
I don't know the name for it, but
yeah.
yes, it's like a
Then you
global
just go through
access.
this. You don't interact with you interact with a computer where you scan your global card, whatever it's called, and
Yeah.
you're through in seconds.
Yes.
What they're going to do is next time it'll be with your face recognition. And guess
Right.
what? Everyone to get out of the airport quickly will. Most people will sign on for face recognition than waiting 2 hours without the biometrics.
Of course. Of course.
You see, this is how they're going
Conve
to pull in
the
people.
convenience.
And then the airlines. So if you're, say, going United Airlines, I was traveling to India earlier this year,
Mhm.
and at the Chicago, no, this was at the Denver airport or something. Coming back, I saw facial recognition cameras at every boarding gate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every
I
boarding gate.
actually I called them out when I recently traveled and they said, "Oh, don't worry, we delete it." And I said, "Well, then why do you need to take it
Yeah,
in the first place?"
right.
Yeah. But it's
So
all a trick
while they may not
training.
mandate federally initially,
Right. They're going to
people will get
incentivize
sucked in
people.
through various, like these facial recognition cameras are owned by United Airlines at their terminal, right? So
Mhm.
United
Right.
Terminal is all about data collection by United Airlines in their terminals. So the moment you enter their terminal, United has all the rights over all your data.
Wow.
You go
So
to the
each
Delta
airline will.
terminal. Yeah. So, and if you notice, last 10 years or so, most or almost all NBA, NFL, and professional sports stadiums have
Mhm.
a corporation name before that. Like Candlestick Park in San Francisco became Levi's Stadium. And the question to ask is why? Because the corporation whose name is attached to that stadium has all the rights to all the data of the 50, 100,000 sports fans that come to see the game every week. So they're doing data collection through their devices, through cameras and everything. And data is the new oil, which feeds into the carbon and social currency.
Mm-hmm. And so it's the
It's not
corporations
for
are all
advertising. It's not for advertising. Levi's doesn't need to advertise with a name on a stadium. Like everybody knows about Levi's or Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Dallas or wherever.
so it's so that they have ownership of
Ownership
the
of the
data.
data, because data is valuable.
Yes, very valuable. Very valuable. So this is so are companies or corporations like competing for data?
Absolutely. And when, for instance, uh, if I don't have certain amount of data on you and you open my app to use something, if I don't have enough data on you, I may not be allowed to give you access to certain things because of zero
What do
trust,
you mean?
right?
Zero
Okay.
trust.
This is, let me explain to you. So
Yeah.
let's say you go into, I'll give you let's walk through a physical store. Let's go to a physical store. You want to go to your grocery store. There's beef behind the plexiglass door with a 3D camera, right? And let's say it's Whole Foods. So Whole Foods is doing the data collection, and Whole Foods is the front end of you getting permission to open that door or not, right? Now,
Right.
Whole Foods needs to know whether enough data was computed on your activities based on your carbon footprint for that month. If it doesn't have any data on you, it doesn't know whether it should allow you to open the door or not. So if it
Right.
doesn't have enough data on you, it has to go to some other apps that have data on me. So in real time, it may go to Google and say, I want data on Aman. So it'll pay Google a few pennies in a real time transaction and get data on me, and then come to the conclusion that I have enough carbon credits to open that door, or I don't have enough carbon credits to keep the door closed. Do you see?
So I do see it's incredibly dystopian. So if they're forcing this whole net zero, carbon zero agenda, but essentially that's forcing depopulation. That I mean, that's where that goes. Carbon is
Potentially,
literally
yeah.
the life. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's literally the life molecule. So what happens if so now they're so even people who can see through that and are not supporting the narrative, they're forcing it through technology. So
Through
that's
corporations and technology, yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And even the corporations have a noose around the neck. I don't know how much deeper I should go into explaining this, but there was a paper in McKinsey Insights. So people should go to McKinsey Insights. They have amazing
Okay.
white papers which kind of keeps unrolling the sustainability agenda and net zero and all that. But
Yeah.
so let's say now I'll go into a new layer of explanation on how a corporation is held hostage when they have to give me permission to open a door or not.
Okay.
So I've gone to Whole Foods, which is owned by Amazon, and the Whole Foods
Mhm.
app. Whole Foods is required to put a certain amount of the digital cryptocurrency into an escrow for every
Okay.
transaction. It's all happening by
Right.
AI and algorithms. So this is no human beings doing this, but
Right. Right.
in escrow. And then it has like, and if it's confident that it has enough data on me, it has to go and get verification from 10 other companies that it is consistent with the 10 other companies that have data on me in real time. And if the majority of the companies say, nay, you've got the wrong data, Whole Foods is penalized and that money in escrow goes away, and their social credits effectively, or their ESG credits, go down. So each corporation with every transaction is also being watched by 10 other companies to make sure that they are implementing this agenda correctly and collecting enough data on their customers. And if they are not collecting, then they need to buy the data from the people that are collecting.
If they're not collecting, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
I said, and if they are not collecting enough data on their customers through surveillance and cameras and applications, interactivity, then they need to go and buy that data from the corporations that are collecting data on those customers. So it's fairly complicated, and at the same time, it's so elegant from a tyrannical perspective. Like whoever made these agendas over time just is like, it's just unbelievably mastery of tyranny.
Mastery of evil. I mean, it's really
mastery of evil.
mastery. It really is. And it makes it. Oh wow! I'm just going to read this over the. This is the DTCC. You're familiar with DTCC? I'm guessing. Yeah, there.
Yeah,
so
I don't
this
remember
is
what it stands for, but I've read these
Depository Trust and Clearing Company. So it was the Depository Trust. They merged with the Clearing Company, and they basically own Seed and Co. SEDE. So this says that, and they're well, let's read this first, then we can go through
I'll
it.
go back to this and look.
Over the 15 years, digital assets are forecasted to grow in value to 16 trillion. DTCC will support the growth of digital assets with continued experimentation of blockchain technology on DTCC's test sheet system. Yeah, I've been thinking. So they make money on all the transactions of and so it makes sense that this would be a huge industry for them, the digital, because it's it's really all transactions. So DTCC comments on SEC rulings, expanded U.S. Treasury clearing. These were amendments in 2022. Yeah, I'll have to dig more into it. I had a bit of a theory on how much they were driving, but people point to like BlackRock, and BlackRock has tremendous assets, but DTCC blows them out of the water. I think it was like something. It's in the billions. What? 87 trillion.
BlackRock was given 10 trillion of assets to manage during the 2020 money printing after COVID.
Of the coins?
No. Just when COVID happened and all the infrastructure bills and all the bills that were signed for giving free handouts in 2020.
Oh.
In the process, 10 trillion of assets were being managed by BlackRock at the time.
Right.
After they printed the money. So 16 trillion is not that far away.
But that's nothing to them. They manage 87 trillion.
Possibly, yeah.
No, they do. I think it was right on their Wikipedia page. 87 trillion. DTCC.
I wouldn't trust Wikipedia ever, though.
Well, all right. And there are other sources that point to it.
Wikipedia exists for a reason. Wikipedia exists for a reason.
I don't disagree with you. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure that if it's not 87 trillion, it is something really astronomically high. But I am pretty sure I've seen that number from several sources. So maybe it's not exact, but they blow BlackRock out of the water. They're definitely a very, very large infrastructure. So, but anyway, yeah. So it sounds like this is all being built out through the corporations, and it's they're really they don't have much of a means to be able to resist, which is really that seems to be the scary part, because even if they wanted to, if they basically comply, they go along with this plan, or they bet the plan, or they cease to be, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, I don't think there's any corporation left in the world that is going to resist, because any CEOs that would have resisted have been replaced a few years ago.
Right. Right. So the hope is really in the smaller
Local.
companies, small companies, and local action against
Yeah.
cities. Okay. Well, I hope people do that
But
because
again,
this.
it's going to be difficult, even for difficult. Let's say I'm a supplier. Let's
Uh-huh.
say there's a big grocery store which is owned by a corporation in my, say, a small town, right? Say of 50,000 people. And if I'm a local supplier of, uh, say, farm fresh eggs, or local supplier of cookies,
Mm-hmm.
if I don't package my eggs or cookies in green packaging,
Mm-hmm.
then the corporation that's buying from me, their ESG scores will go down, and I will be forced to move to green packaging and sustainable packaging. So
Right.
they might cut me out of my supply chain, and if I don't, the my customer, which is the retailer, will cut me out of their supply chain,
Mm-hmm.
even as a
Yeah.
small business in a local area.
Yeah. Exactly. So I just wanted to, from their own website, it actually does say that it's 87.1 trillion as of 2021. It is from the DTCC.
Okay.
So of course they could lie as well, but it's from their direct website that's what they say. They say in 2022, approximately 957 million securities were valued at 462 trillion were settled at DTCC in an efficient and risk control process. And then it does say that they have so the payment and transfer of securities ownership occurs at DCC, which provides custody and asset servicing for securities issues from more than 170 countries and territories, valued at 87.1 trillion as of 2021. So yeah. And their services include underwriting, corporate actions processing, securities processing, global tax services, and issuer services. So yeah. Again,
It'll be
that doesn't
interesting to
mean it.
find. It'll be interesting to uh, identify the cap table and owners of GDCC,
The cap tables,
like capitalization table, as in who owns what percentage of GDCC, because it
right?
might be it'll be interesting if BlackRock is the major shareholder,
Right. No, that would be very interesting
right?
to see. I'll have to
Either
look into
Vanguard
that.
or BlackRock. Yeah,
Uh-huh. Or State Street. Yeah. But probably BlackRock or Vanguard. That sounds right.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, thank you. I really appreciate you going through all of this and making it so clear for people, because I certainly, have been tracking a lot of this, and I've been talking about it, but I think it's so, I don't know if it's because it's so dark or if it's just so intricate. A lot of people just really have a hard time believing that this is really, in place and how fast it's moving forward. So I think it's really important for people to have an awareness, and not just an awareness, but a really solid understanding of the details and how this could be implemented. Because you can't defeat an enemy that you don't know. So
right.
I think that is really important for people, not just to have like a vague awareness, but really to understand, because it is very intricate, as you laid out, the way that they're putting these nooses around everyone's neck. It's very intricate and very complicated. I mean, it's um, not difficult to understand. It's just that there's so many elements
Yeah, there
and
are
so
a
many
lot of
layers.
moving parts. There are a lot of
Yeah.
moving parts, but I think they all come together as a symphony of tyranny and evil.
I don't disagree on that.
Yeah.
Um, what are your thoughts on I guess it'll be my last question, but the biodigital convergence, and is there any connection to uh, yeah, how does that play into all of this?
This is the biodigital convergence. It's the convergence of our biology as human beings the
Mhm.
digital world. We talked about the digital transformation and our uh, and the
Right, but
transformation of ourselves into as a digital twin, and
mhm.
then our the biology and our physical spaces, right?
Right.
The
I think
biological world, the physical world, and the digital world all coming together. That is the
sure. I think
biodigital
I'm
convergence.
asking, like, Yuval Noah Harari keeps saying this is the year that, the data goes under the skin. So I think a lot of people think of the biodigital convergence as literally being something like Elon's Neuralink, or they think of some sort of a mark of the beast that goes, underneath the skin, or something that is more. But as you've laid out, it doesn't have to
There
be,
you go.
obviously. I mean, just merging with the interface. I mean, there's these technologies now, and they already have them where they can read the tracking your eyes, and then they can they can construct it into like words and to convey your thoughts based on reading your eyes. So it certainly does not have to be a physical implantation, but I think that's where I just wanted to flesh that out for a second, because I think a lot of people think that unless it's done that way, that there is no biodigital convergence. So,
No, so let me clarify my
yeah,
perspective. Uh,
yes,
can you see my screen?
no, but we will add it.
Yeah, please.
There we go. Yes, danger formula. Okay,
Yeah.
World Economic Forum.
So not too long ago, Mr. Yuval Harari, in one of the WEF conferences, was making a
Mm-hmm.
presentation, and he presented the danger formula,
Okay.
where B times C times D equals R.
Uh huh.
B is the
Yeah.
biological knowledge. C is the
Okay.
compute power in the cloud. D is the data collected from humans linked to your digital ID via biometric facial recognition,
Okay.
is equal to the ability to hack humans. So they don't need a
Well,
physical chip inside you,
right.
right? I mean,
Right.
sure, they might put physical chips inside you, but the point
And
is they
lots of
don't
people will
need to.
sign up to do that too. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they don't need to, because they are collecting data from us through all the sensors which are within your home, your devices, as well as smart cities. And that's why the goal is to sensorize everything, right?
Right.
Your smartwatch, your gait recognition, your emotions being captured on your faces, that's all biological knowledge being captured by AI through cameras,
Yeah.
right? Compute
Mm-hmm.
power is almost infinite, because the more compute AI needs, Nvidia and Google and Intel will continue keep building servers and put them in the cloud. So compute power is unlimited. So the
Right.
more biological knowledge that AI has through sensors, and
Right.
the more data all the IoT sensors are collecting through cameras and other sensors, is really the ability to hack humans, right?
Yeah.
And this is
Mm-hmm.
the biodigital convergence,
Yeah. Biological, physical, and digital. Yep. No, it absolutely is.
right? So yeah,
Absolutely.
will some people all focus on having chips inside you? I think it's a red herring, because people will think that, oh, since I don't have a chip inside me,
Yep.
the biodigital convergence isn't here. It's here, right? It's here.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think that's exactly that's why I brought it up, and I wanted you to clarify, because a lot of people do say that, well, I'm never getting a chip, so this doesn't apply to me. But the
Yeah,
reality is that, I think that they still will move forward with the chips, because they'll do whatever they can to do testing, and it'll help advance the technologies. But of course, it's not necessary, as you just
it's
laid
not
out. So,
necessary. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. So this is the Davos agenda. Yeah, the B times C times D, ah, yeah, equals ah. Wow. All right. Well, thank you.
your
I'm
thing.
appreciated. If you have anything else that you want to leave us with, please do. Um,
No, I
Yuval
think
Harari.
the only thing I, I I I like to finish with is that if people realize the agenda and
Yeah.
are able to identify the fact that the smart city infrastructure via the digital transformation and the 5 pillars to enslave humanity, once they understand that, and if you don't do everything in your power to resist this agenda, then you are directly responsible for the enslavement of yourself, your children, and your grandchildren into perpetuity.
Right. Yeah. So we must resist for sure.
And I would be
Well,
happy if people go to my YouTube channel and
yes,
watch my full presentation.
definitely.
and
We'll link
and
that,
share
and I
it
know
around. Yeah,
definitely. And you have another one coming up on the LED lights, so I'll personally be looking for that for sure.
hopefully.
So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
been hard. The LED light stuff, a lot of censorship is happening, so I'm having a hard time finding the information I need to find to uh, present certain facts that I
interesting.
intuitively believe is happening.
Right. Interesting. So they're censoring it, and you can tell that it's being
Yeah,
censored.
because a lot of patents have been removed that I had seen 3-4 years ago.
Really?
So I'm not being able to see a bunch of patents on LED lighting.
Wow. And that's interesting that they would remove patents, because patents don't necessarily mean that they've been implemented. They're just
That's true.
right.
But the thing is, there are certain patents that have been implemented.
Sure. I'm sure. I'm not arguing that they
Yeah.
haven't. I'm just saying that it's interesting that they would remove something that is
No,
not
when I say remove the
direct.
patents, I'm not being able to find them on patent searches. It doesn't mean that patents don't exist or the patents have
No,
been
no, no.
removed from the
I follow.
patent office. Yeah. It's from patent
Sure.
searches. I can't find them.
Sure. I know I followed what you were saying. I'm just
Yeah.
saying I personally think that's interesting, because it's not a direct, it's not a cause and effect. Just because a patent exists doesn't mean that technology is being used, and it certainly doesn't mean it's being
No.
used in a way that is necessarily detrimental or nefarious, right? So it's interesting that they would censor or make it difficult for you to even find the patent, because you could have a patent on anything. It doesn't necessarily mean that that technology is then being used. So if they are trying to
No,
censor even finding the information.
if so there are many patents that are rubbish, right? I mean,
Sure,
I've filed many patents over my life, and so I know how the patent process works. There are
yep,
many patents that are rubbish, but they are filed for a reason, especially in big
sure,
corporations. In big corporations, they want to file as many patents as possible, even though they don't have a whole lot of strength, because when mergers and acquisitions are happening between companies, part of the valuation of a company, that the technological strength is based on the
yep,
number of patents, not necessarily on the value of those patents.
sure,
uh, at the same time, if one understands lighting and optics and how LED lights are going to be used for a certain agenda, one
mhm,
can form and link the dots through a patent, through products, and
mhm,
demonstrate through good arguments that a certain
mhm,
implementation of this is going to happen, and this is the reason why it's going to happen.
yeah. Oh, absolutely, I agree. Well, I hope you do find this patent. Um, yeah, and tell everybody I just posted, yeah, the YouTube channel. Tell them, for those who are listening and not watching, where the channel is and where best to find you.
Just YouTube, search for my name, and you'll find my
Mhm.
channel.
Okay.
Hopefully, it won't be censored on your browser or your internet provider. And I'm
Mhm.
at No Flaps on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you'd like to follow me there, I sometimes post.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much. And
Thank
yeah,
you for having me. Yeah, that was a fun
you're
conversation.
welcome. Likewise, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
It was very terrifying, but very valuable information. So I really
don't be
appreciate it.
terrified. Don't be terrified. As what I say is, fear is the currency of control. So being terrified
Yeah.
is not
Well,
the answer. Yeah.
yeah, that's a great way to reframe it, because I agree. I think the information, having people be aware, right, is the great awakening. So I do think for people to know, that's the first step, that we can take some take some control by resisting. But if we don't know
Yeah.
what's happening, then there's nothing to resist. So yeah, so I appreciate you bringing awareness to it. Before we sign off, I'm going to say goodbye to the audience, but if you could stay on for just a minute so that we can upload everything, make sure we have it, then that would be great. So all right. Well, thank you all for watching, and thank you all for listening, and thank you so much for being here and for all the work you're doing. Really appreciate it. So,
Thank you.
thank you.